Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be sharing with you guys my beautiful Spanish learning journey, because I actually get asked a lot how I managed to make such big progress in such a short period of time. I posted a video last year sharing my DELE C1 exam experience, and after I posted the video, a lot of people asked me how is it possible that you were only in Spain for 2 years and you already passed DELE C1 exam. So today I'm gonna review all my Spanish learning journey with you guys, and I certainly didn't only study Spanish for 2 years and managed to pass DELE C1 like a miracle. So let's rewind and start from the very beginning of my Spanish learning journey. I actually started learning Spanish when I was only 11 years old, I think. When I was little, my mom was in Argentina for 3 years, and ever since she came back, she started teaching me Spanish every once in a while, like little phrases or like the basic grammar. We got some Spanish speaking friend in the city, so whenever my mom went to meet her friend, I normally would just go with her and then say hi to these people, even though most of the times I was just sitting there at the table giving a really polite smile because I didn't understand anything except for the hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? So for me, I think I've built this Spanish, I wouldn't say way of thinking, because what I learned back then was really basic, but I had a very good idea of how Spanish works. That like there were conjugations, but I was not an expert in doing all these conjugations. Like I got confused all the time. I only knew the very basic stuff. Like I have the framework ready when I was little. So growing up, my Spanish knowledge has always been this big, but I would say, of course, this is already bigger than a lot of people who have never learned Spanish. And I think the first time that I started making some real progress in Spanish was when I was interning in New York, because I live in New Jersey and I had like 30 to 40 minutes commute on the bus, and I was thinking how could I make the most out of this time, and I encountered this amazing podcast online. It's called Coffee Break Spanish. I bought 4 seasons and I just listened to it on my way to work almost every single day, even though I ended up falling asleep most of the times. I think after like 15 to 20 minutes listening to the podcast on the bus, I was like sleeping like a baby. Even though I only listen to it every now and then, I think I started to learn a bit more vocabulary and understand some of the grammar better, because the host, he's from Scotland, so he's basically teaching Spanish with English, and I would say these two languages share a lot more similarities than Spanish and Chinese. Anyway, so the turning point was I traveled to Spain in 2018, and during my trip here in Spain, I realized that I started to understand a lot of the conversation, which was sort of magical for me, because back then, before I listened to this like podcast, as I told you guys, my Spanish knowledge has always been this big ever since I was 11 years old. I came to Spain 2019, and of course I signed up for language school when I came here. And on the first day of the school, they had this placement test during which you did like all these grammar questions, and then one of the teachers would have a conversation with you upstairs just to see how your speaking skills are. I think she put B1/B2 on my test result, and that same day I got assigned to a B2 class. I think that's the beginning of B2. So the truth is, when people ask me how did you start making sense of this language when you first started, I couldn't answer this question because I was exposed to the language when I was younger. So I didn't really go through this A1, A2 period. Even though they placed me in this B1/B2, actually B2 class, my speaking was awful. I remember the first day when I was in class, I told myself you had to try to express yourself as much as possible, even if that might be awkward. And the truth is, it was very awkward because I had no vocabulary. All the vocabulary that I had in Spanish came from English. I translated whatever word that makes sense from English to Spanish, and I still remember when I was trying to say social media, I had no idea how do you say social media media social. I remember checking the word social media in the dictionary while I was trying to express it, and I saw like a bunch of options. I didn't even know which one makes sense because I just landed in Spain and I didn't read anything in Spanish. I had no idea how people talk. I had no idea what kind of vocabulary people use here. I remember I really struggled a lot, and every time I talked in class, I felt so ashamed of myself because I paused so much and I had to check so many words. I didn't even know why I was in a B2 class. Even so, I told myself, you gotta make little progress every single day by trying to express more in class. I did start to gain this confidence of talking to people. At the end of the day, language is something that you use to communicate with people. Even if you're speaking broken Spanish, it's still better than not speaking at all. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made back then was that I saw going to class for 4 hours every single day as some sort of task. My mindset was that I already contributed 4 hours of my day into learning Spanish and I should be seeing progress little by little. I didn't really put myself out there trying to practice Spanish after class. I didn't even watch Spanish shows. I didn't try to read books or newspapers after class. So truth is, even though I went to class every day, my grammar was getting better because I was learning a lot more. I struggled a lot with the conjugations, still with the vocabulary. I've always been struggling with vocabulary in Spanish. 3.5 months later, pandemic hit, and I would say the pandemic was the second real turning point in my Spanish learning journey, because when you stay at home, got absolutely nothing else to do, you started to think, you started to read, you started to watch whatever shows that were available to you. And I started to develop different ways to learn Spanish. I started to really read books in Spanish, even though they were just books for kids. I mean, books for kids were not easy at all because there were so many like small words to describe different body movement, to describe the situation. So I think it was during the pandemic that I started to make real progress in Spanish. I watch news in Spanish every day because I gotta know what's happening out there, what was going on with the pandemic. So my point is, what you can learn in a class or what the teacher can teach you is very limited because they can only tell you all these rules. Personally, I don't think it's realistic that you make big progress only in class. I think you make the biggest progress out of class. Language is something that you only get the output if you have enough input. Let's think of it this way. Why you can speak your native language so well? It's because you spend 20-30 years listening to the same language every single day. You have enough input for you to be able to speak your native language fluently. So if you want to be able to speak a foreign language, you're gonna need really big amount of language input for you to be able to do that. You probably cannot describe something as precisely as a native speaker because, as I said, they grew up here. They had like 20-30 years of experience listening to the same language, but you don't. So all you can do is to get as much input as you can. And what you learn in class is just like the most condensed rules of the language. Because if you really think about it, what is grammar? Grammar is the pattern of a language. So in a way, it's important to learn the grammar because you don't need to read as much to be able to conclude all these rules by yourself. But then knowing all these rules doesn't guarantee you to be able to speak a language fluently because you're only learning the pattern. You need something else to add to this pattern. Like you have the bone structure of a person, you need like real flesh to add to the bones for this person to be like a real complete person. That makes sense. In December of 2020, I was thinking that I sort of needed a push to take my Spanish up a notch, and that push would be a DELE exam, and I wanted to challenge C1 because in a way that was like a milestone for me. So I signed up for the exam of July 2021 in January. So for this half year, boy, I worked really hard. And I was lucky enough to have a really good Spanish teacher online. He really inspired me to talk more in class. You can write whatever you want to share in class, and he would correct all these mistakes that you have in your writing. In a way, I think writing is also a very necessary exercise, because when you speak, you have to react really fast. Whereas in writing, I think the most important thing is the precision. When you write, you have enough time to think. It's not like time sensitive. You've got time to organize your sentence really well. You've got the time to apply the good sentence structures or the good vocabulary that you've seen before. I would definitely encourage language learners to write as much as possible, even if it was just like one paragraph. And if you're not sure about the conjugation of a word, you go to the dictionary, you go check. I mean, this is how people make progress in a language. If you write enough, you have that conjugation or whatever vocabulary imprinted in your brain, so when you talk, you just like pull it right away from the most active layer of your brain. So back to the question in the beginning, I'm no language genius. Everybody has their own pace. An exam or a test or anything or your level is just temporary, but making progress is eternal. So I hope you feel encouraged and inspired after watching today's video. I've shared all the tips and tricks that I think can be useful for a language learner from my own language learning experience. So I will see you guys in the next one. Ciao!